Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Today, we have a brand new set of great stories for you to enjoy. If you're new here, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Sit comfortably. Here we go. Manager thought my job role was unnecessary. Learns the hard way, it wasn't. About 20 years ago, I worked in the technology field as a sales engineer supporting sales reps. A new sales rep manager joined the field team. He didn't like the control sales engineers had over the sales process. Because I was the lead sales engineer, he decided to make me an example of his brilliance. He got a very large lead with the bank and proceeded to close a very large deal without involving any sales engineers at all. Just after the deal closed, he called to gloat, saying something to the effect of, "The biggest deal of the month. Oh wait, you didn't participate at all." About a month or so later, I get a call from that manager in a bit of a panic, and I partake in a conference call with the customer. It's decided I need to come to the company for a meeting. At the meeting, I figure out that the sales manager and the sales rep totally effed things up and sold the customer an incompatible set of solutions. In the meeting, I casually mentioned that maybe the customer could return one bit of stuff and replace it with another as they were roughly the same price. After the meeting, the sales manager starts bitching at me for mentioning price. Price was the exclusive domain of the sales rep. He calls my manager, crapped all over me. I didn't like my manager at all, so when he took the sales rep's side, I said F you and quit. I sent a very lengthy defense of my actions during the meeting to HR. 4 months later, I get a call from another sales rep still at the company. He asks, "Hey, what happened at XYZ Bank? They're suing us." I call XYZ Bank and get the email for the CIO and send them a letter explaining I was the sales engineer for the company you're suing. Call me. They eventually send a lawyer to interview me and get my side of events. My testimony was devastating to my former company's defense. I showed the bank the letter I sent my HR in which I claim our company lied to the customer to get a sale. Eventually, I get a subpoena to be deposed in the bank versus company lawsuit by my former company's lawyers. By that time, I was working elsewhere and hanging out on Yahoo stock message boards and bashing the company's stock. One day, another sales rep from a distant territory that I still talk to called me to say that a huge deal we'd worked on for over a year had just fallen through in dramatic fashion. I posted it to the Yahoo message board devoted to that stock. The stock crashed $13 the next day. I wondered if my post had anything to do with it. About 6 weeks after the stock crash, it's the day before I'm supposed to get deposed in the bank versus company matter, I get served with a lawsuit by the company. They had used the SLAPP laws to get my identity from Yahoo and sue me for the post that crashed their stock. So I went to the deposition the next day and said, "I'm sorry, the company you represent today just served me with a lawsuit last night. This deposition is over." They were dumbfounded. Turns out there were 2 separate legal teams, one working on defending the company against the bank suit, and one finding that pesky internet troll that crashed their stock, and the 2 never noticed the same person was central to each. The company settled with the bank and dropped their suit against me soon thereafter. That long letter I sent to HR? Turns out the managers above me didn't read it. Once the lawsuit was over, the sales rep, the sales manager, and his manager were all fired. And our next story. Airline pilot refuses my offer and demands more. We work in airline crew scheduling, where our jobs essentially involve ensuring each flight is fully crewed. This requires us to strictly adhere to many rules, including aviation regulations set by the Federal Aviation Administration and collective bargaining agreements, CBAs, upheld by the pilot and flight attendant unions. However, some of the rules in the CBA can be a little flexible, especially when we can offer pilots additional compensation and they agree to waive certain contractual provisions in exchange. There is a CBA rule for this airline that outlines when and for how long a pilot can be on reserve, a window of time in which they are essentially on call in case we need them to work, and states that if we have an assignment for them, it must start within that window or it's not contractually legal. However, we would frequently offer pilots additional compensation, usually a full day's worth of pay, if they agreed to waive that provision and work trips that start outside of their reserve window. 99% of the time, pilots would accept this additional compensation. Very rarely, in extreme circumstances, we could offer even more pay, sometimes up to 200%, and only if the flight would otherwise be canceled and cause expensive operational disruptions. I should point out that while most pilots are fantastic to work with, a certain percentage of them are very arrogant and entitled. It's an attitude that frequently occurs in the pilot population. I don't know why. I've worked in the industry for many years, and the same personality tends to appear quite often. More so at the regional airline level, less so in major or legacy airlines. Anyone else who's worked with pilots before can attest to this. The arrogant attitude is especially pronounced towards crew schedulers, though, because we get to be the bad guys and make them go to work. This story concerns a pilot with this attitude/personality who was on reserve. We had a 4-day trip starting in Detroit, DTW, that we needed to find a captain for. But we didn't have any DTW-based reserve captains that were legal to work it. The trip started around noon the next day, and it was currently late evening the day prior, about 18 hours before the trip started. There was a captain on reserve at that moment and for the next 4 days, but he was scheduled for evenings and the trip started outside his reserve window. So I called him and customarily offered him a full day's extra pay to immediately go to bed and come back the following morning for this trip. He flat out refuses my offer, then proceeds to tell me I should offer him 200% for the entire trip instead. So basically, 4 extra days of pay. I explained that it's against our procedures to offer that much extra pay just to show up early, and even so, we would have to offer that level of compensation to other pilots in seniority order first. He adamantly and rudely proclaims there's no way he's going to work an illegal assignment unless he gets 200%. I say okay and hang up. At that point, I came up with a brilliant plan. I look up our airline's flight schedule and find out there is a late flight leaving soon to go to Tampa, TPA, and a flight the following morning that operates from TPA back to DTW. So I rebuild the open trip with all the same flights as before, except now it's a 5-day trip that begins with these 2 flights as deadheads. A deadhead is basically a flight that the pilot does not operate. They usually ride with the passengers or in the cockpit jump seat. So he would fly as a passenger to Tampa, stay in a hotel, then fly as a passenger back to DTW just in time to work the flights I had previously asked him to work. The new trip was completely legal per the CBA, and it now started comfortably within this captain's reserve window. So I assign it to him and call him back. He, of course, is not happy about it. He asks me to change it back and agrees that he'll take the extra day of pay, but I decline. The trip is legal now, and I don't need to change it or offer any extra pay for him to work it. I then ice the cake a bit. I humbly and calmly offer to let him deviate off the scheduled deadheads, which normally means the pilot will not take the deadheads and will instead find their own transportation to the city from which their first operating flight departs, which in this case is his home city. I did the math later, and I found out that even if he did not deviate, the cost of a non-revenue seat on both flights and paying for a hotel in TPA amounted to less than a full day's pay at his pay rate. There was no additional pay for the longer trip either, since he was getting paid for each of the 5 reserve days anyway. My MC actually saved the company a little money. And our next story. Sure, I'll come in on my day off work. I used to work at a factory that would shut down and be completely cleaned every weekend. Only 2 people were needed for this, and they only had to supervise and help the hired cleaning company. At the time, I had a boyfriend living 2 hours from me, and every weekend I would take the train to see him. My supervisor knew this as it came up in casual conversation before. On Friday, I checked the roster, hung in the break room. I was not scheduled for cleaning duties this weekend, so I could go to my boyfriend. Happy coincidence. I made a photo of the roster to send to a coworker since she forgot to check it and had already left for the day. On Saturday morning, I get a call from the supervisor. S. Where are you? Me. What? S. You're supposed to be here. You're scheduled to work. Me. No, my name wasn't on the roster yesterday. S. Well, I put it on there yesterday evening. You're supposed to check it before you leave. Me. I had the morning shift. How can I check the roster in the evening? S. You should ask a coworker to check it for you. Now get over here. Me. I'm in a town 2 hours away, and you called me out of bed. S. I don't care how long it takes. You're scheduled for today, so you're working today. Me. Fine, I'll be there ASAP. I loved the pay. Saturday was overtime, so extra pay. So I got dressed, took a shower, and hopped on the train. From the train station to the factory is another half hour, so I got there about 3 hours after cleaning duties were supposed to begin, and everyone had to stay 3 hours longer than usual. Double overtime. The cleaning crew didn't mind since they got paid extra too. The other coworker wasn't too thrilled, understandably, but he knew how unreasonable the supervisor could be. As for the supervisor herself, when I arrived, S, finally, what took you so long? Me, like I said on the phone, I wasn't exactly close. S, next time just check the damn roster. Me, I did. I even have a photo of the roster on Friday at 1 p.m. I pull out my phone, and as you can see, I was not on it. Don't try to blame me for this. I was pretty PO'd at her behavior at this point. S, well, we'll see what the boss thinks about your work ethic. Me, I'll show him the photo. According to my contract, my roster is supposed to be communicated to me 2 weeks beforehand. That shut her up for the day. We all got paid heavily. The cleaning crew got paid to sit around and drink coffee for 3 hours. And the next morning, I found out what happened with the roster on Friday. Apparently, another coworker had told the supervisor that she wouldn't be able to work for a week, the week of the incident, due to surgery on her arm. She'd told her a month before. S, not being bright, thought the coworker could just come in on Saturday since it was only to watch if the cleaning crew was doing everything correctly and not stealing anything. The coworker, upon seeing her name on the roster, clarified in no uncertain terms that she would not be working due to potentially very heavy pain. This shouldn't be a problem, since there were about 10 people who could have worked in her stead. But no, S decided instead of asking for a volunteer, she would wait until the day before and just write a name on the roster and hope that they had no plans, and notice their name on the roster. There were no consequences for S this time, but the cleaning crew had a great laugh and a nice paycheck. And so did I. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video, and I'll see you in the next one.